Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Learning to Glow podcast. I feel like I haven't talked to you guys in a while because I just got back from a few-week adventure in Europe. I'm still feeling so jet lagged, which is so crazy to me. I'm not sure why this time around it hit me so hard. Last time I was in Europe was so many years ago that I just don't remember. It takes a little bit of time to get used to being back, but super tired and hoping that I snap out of this very soon. I can't wait to share more about my trip as well. I want to share what I learned in Europe and talk about some of my experiences because I think it was such an incredible trip. I learned a lot. I experienced a lot, and I would love to share it with you guys. So make sure you are subscribed to my podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed wherever you listen, and I will have that episode for you soon. As far as today is concerned, I'm really excited to share our conversation with Elizabeth. She's a nutrition coach, behavior change expert, and a true advocate for food freedom. In this episode, we dive into Elizabeth's journey from personal training to helping people build sustainable wellness habits that actually stick. We talk about mindful eating, learning to trust your body, letting go of dieting mindset for good. So many great nuggets of wisdom with Elizabeth. I absolutely love this episode. She shares so many practical insights like how to tune into your hunger and fullness cues. Create routines that work for your life and make small changes that lead to lasting results. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by health goals or stuck in an all or nothing mindset, this episode will feel like a breath of fresh air. And make sure to check out the show notes because we talk about a free meditation that she's offering on mindful eating, which we really talked about in the beginning of this episode. So make sure to go there and get your copy of this amazing meditation. And I hope you enjoy this. I'd love to hear from you after you listen. Send me a message. Share it with somebody who you think could really benefit from this information. And I will also link where to find Elizabeth at A Woman of Wellness. Enjoy this one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show today. We have Elizabeth Dall. Welcome to Learning to Glow.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. I'm so excited that you're here. Before we get started into our topic, I would love if you could just tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and then we can go from there.
Yes. So my title, I guess you'd say, I'm a nutrition coach and behavior change coach and food freedom expert. So I like to say I go deep on creating change in health with our health and wellness habits from a place of food freedom and from a place of just having a good relationship with our body and with food and creating sustainable habits. So that's kind of my title, I guess you'd say.
I love, that's one of my favorite things to talk about on the show, and getting healthy in a way that is sustainable and coming from a really nice place instead of a place of restriction and dieting and being mean to ourselves. And it's something that it's a very common theme on the show. It's so important because I think so many people have done the opposite for most of their lives. So how did you get into this work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started as a personal trainer, which a lot of people in the wellness space do. And I was giving them these textbook perfect plans, right? Do eat this, exercise this way, follow this. And I would give these plans to them, and then I'd only see them maybe twice in the gym a week, and I'd say, okay, the rest of the days, go do this, you'll get these results. And time after time, I would have women come back to me and they weren't getting results and they weren't following the plan. And they were just saying, life got in the way. I was emotional. I was tired. It was stressful. It was really hard to stick to the plan. And what I realized is that if it was about following another plan, none of us would be stuck, right? We wouldn't be here today. And the reality is it's learning how to implement nutrition plans and strategies into an imperfect life, right? It's these perfect plans that we're trying to stick into our lives and realizing it's not perfect. And so once I figured that out, everything changed for not only my clients but me, because I was in the same cycle. I was like, okay, just follow this, do the right things, and I would sabotage by the evening as well, right? I would overeat and all that stuff. And so that's really what shifted for me and my clients was, okay, we have to learn how to change the behavior and create a lifestyle of wellness rather than a 30-day plan and then I'm done.
It's so true, and I can relate to all of that. I mean, I think so many people get excited and they wanna do something like a 30-day, 21 days, they wanna have, like, all these results, and they, like, white knuckle through it, but then at the end of that, it's like, where are the sustainable habits? Where are you, like, in your head that you can not just think of this as just a short-term thing? Because I think that's a big reason why diets are so successful, because people just go into it like, I have an event and I want to lose weight, and then what happens when that's over? So because that is such a fundamental part of like making lasting change, like where do you start with your clients? Where's like the beginning, the baseline for people who don't have this incorporated into their lifestyle? And it's easy to say just go do this, but then things get in the way. So where do you start with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I start in a place most people don't think about, but we start by building a trusting relationship with our body. When we have followed a lot of these plans, we have kind of turned off or ignored our body's cues and what it's trying to tell us, because the plan says eat this, don't eat that, eat this much, right?
Mhm.
Stop here. And we have really lost touch with our hunger and our fullness cues, and also just with our body, especially if we're in a place of feeling yucky in our bodies, right? Where it's like, I'm not the size I want to be, or I'm really frustrated with my body. And so it's really hard because we want to escape that body. We want to get out of it. And that's what those diet plans kind of prey on, right? Is like, oh, I'm so desperate to get out of this body. I'll do anything for 30 days. And what I say is, let's take a little more gentle approach, because we all know what happens at the end of the 30 days. Like, we've been there, we have evidence. And so I say, okay, let's start here where we start to connect with your body and start to say, okay, we're going to work on building this trusting relationship. And it could take time. With that, the first step that I teach women is mindful eating. Because if you are a chaotic eater, emotional eater, there's no plan in the world that is going to be perfect enough to help you through those. We've got to start recognizing our body's hunger, fullness cues, satisfaction cues, as well as our emotional, I guess you'd say alarms, right? Sometimes it would be an alarm. And so that's really the first place that I start, is building that relationship with your body with mindfulness with food.
I love that. I was going to ask you about mindful eating. I know I've heard the term, and I'm sure our listeners have heard the term too, but when you are talking about mindful eating, what do you actually mean? What does it mean to be mindful when we eat?
So I think sometimes people get this picture that it's like, okay, I've got to sit down at the table for 20 minutes every meal, and I don't have that kind of time, right? And I think that's not what we're talking about, but it really is about learning to connect with your body's cues. And I
Mm.
thought this might be a good place for a little analogy, a potty training analogy. I have 3 kids, so I've potty trained 2 of them so far. And when you're potty training a child, at the very beginning, you are all hands on deck, because you are like, you're not leaving the house, you're barely leaving the room, you're just like, tell me when you need to go potty. You're trying to help that child learn those cues. And there was lots of accidents at first, but you are just like all in it. And then a few days in, you go, okay, maybe we can go to the park, like maybe we can take a little outing and we're doing okay. And then eventually they start, you can go to the mall and you can go to the restaurant, and they know those cues. Well, that's the same strategy or practice as mindful eating. At the beginning, it does take some sitting down, paying attention. Hey, what is my body trying to tell me? Am I hungry? How can I tell when I'm full? Because if we can recognize when we're full and stop when we're full, any weight loss or any health goal, I guess you'd say, is possible. because that's what happens is we overeat with emotional eating and all of that. And so when you can recognize those cues and honor those cues, you can achieve any goal. Anything is possible. But we have to start by being a little more mindful and sitting down and paying attention to what's going in our mouth and what our body is telling us. And I'll share with you, I have a free mindful eating meditation that I'll send your way so anyone can download it. But it's just 6 minutes where you sit down with your food and just pay attention for a few minutes. And as you start to learn those cues, mindful eating can exist everywhere, at the restaurant, at the event, but we start there.
Oh, I definitely want you to send me that link. I'll put that in the show notes. I want to try that too. I think it's just such a great practice anyway. And from all the nutritionists that I've had on my show, they're like, if you do mindful eat, you are actually going to be having better digestion, and like your food absorption is so much better. Like there's so many reasons to do it. But also, if we're like in the beginning trying to learn how to do this and we're watching TV, it's like you're not connecting the food. It's just like you're out of body. You're not even realizing it until it's too late. You're like, oh God, I've overdone it. Yeah. So what are some tips that you give to people when they're just starting to do this? Because I actually was told to do this because of my digestion issues. And I found it like, I see all these habits that I have created. I work from home and I eat, but then I'm like by myself. So I grab my phone or, I definitely have so many distractions. So do you have any tips for people who are just starting to do this and want to make it something that they incorporate in their lives?
Yeah. And, you're not alone. This is something that's really common and something I also find myself doing. And it's really about a daily choice. And so what I like to tell people is slow down with food. If you can kind of have that catchphrase, I guess you'd say, of slow down with food. Well, what does that mean? Maybe when I'm making food, I kind of slow down, I enjoy it, right? When I sit down at the table, I slow down, I enjoy it. Or before I go grab the phone, because I'm not immune to this either. I mean, I get it. Sometimes you just want to like stare at your phone mindlessly. And there are maybe times and spaces for that, and you can still eat mindfully. But for the most part, can we slow down and experience that experience? I mean, food is an experience. And it really is. You don't have to do it all your meals a day. I recognize we live busy lifestyles, but could you try one meal a day where you say, I'm going to choose to be present and see if something changes for you. See if you recognize that maybe you don't overeat or you leave some food on your plate that normally you would just kind of snarf or find yourself like, oh, I didn't love that as much as I normally do. You can start to identify those cues when you slow down with food.
I love that. I am going to Europe this summer. And one thing I've noticed in the past when I've been in Europe is you don't go into a cafe and say, can I have something to go? They sit down, they rest, they relax, they are social, they have meal. And that's one of the things that I just loved about their culture versus like our culture, which is just very go, go, go. But another thing that you mentioned was hunger cues. And I think this is probably really important when you are talking about mindfully eating, because if you are waiting till the point of you're absolutely famished, I know this for me, like I do not take my time and eat when I'm starving. I'm just like, putting it all in my mouth as fast as possible. So can you tell us a little bit more about hunger cues and why that's so important, especially when we're talking about this topic?
Yeah. So what happens if you pull a swing back really, really far, right? You pull a swing back really far and then you let go of it and it swings all the way really far to the other direction. That's the same example as letting yourself get too hungry, right? We ignore our cues. We don't recognize them. We're busy. And so we keep pulling that swing back, that hunger, back. And so what happens is when we do get the opportunity to eat, it's just like that swing just gets let go and it goes all the way to the other end. We just like almost can't control ourselves. So there is a happy middle. And what I like to tell people is sit down and write down what some of your hunger cues feel like. If I get really, really hungry, I get nauseous. But you might not, right? And so everybody's hunger and fullness cues are a little bit different. Or do you get, quote, hangry? Or do you feel your stomach growling? Like, what are some of those cues that are saying, hey, I need to eat? And then identify that and say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe that's like a 3 or 4 where it's like, yeah, I need to eat. I'm getting hungry. 0 is I've never been hungrier, but 3 or 4 is probably a good place to kind of pull that swing back a little bit, right? So that we can eat enough. And then I say, get yourself to an 8 out of 10 or 80% full. And what I like to think of it as is you could probably have 2 or 3 more bites, but you'd be over full. So that's like a good visual to say, okay, my body's giving me a signal. I could probably have a few more bites, but that would probably be too much, or I might feel over full. Try to get yourself to that 8. A reference point here is 10. I like to say is Thanksgiving stuffed when you are just like, no more food. I've eaten so much. And that gives you just that kind of a good idea of, okay, if I'm between a 7 and 8, if we're really trying to step into some weight loss, we'd pull it back a little bit, maybe at a 7, but an 8 is a good satisfied number.
Oh yeah, that's really back to getting in touch with your body. I know people that are maybe they work all day in a service industry or something, and so I think having a plan for those type of people so they don't get to that 0 of just like I'm so hungry. Talk to me about people that you work with that have come from diets. Like they're being told what to eat, when to eat it, how much to eat. So they're literally being forced to ignore that scale that you're talking about. How do you help with that?
Yeah. So what happens typically is we're doing this backwards. We're starting with the nutrition strategy, right? And then we're trying to hope that our body figures it out. And we're flipping the script today and we're just saying, actually, there is a place for a nutrition strategy, but we have to start with the mindful eating. And so what I like to say is, we've talked a little bit about how to step into this mindful eating practice. And then what you do is you start to bring in some of that nutrition strategy to say, yeah, proteins and carbohydrates and fats play a role in those cues. Protein helps us feel full. Carbohydrates give us our energy, right? And so when we have a good balance on our plate where we say, yeah, I'm being mindful, not only with my hunger and fullness cues, but also with my nutrition choices. I'm trying to get a good amount of protein and some carbohydrates and some vegetables, right? And some fats and things like that. When we have that balance, then we can rely on those hunger and fullness cues to tell us when to stop. But if we're eating, just a bagel and it has just carbohydrates in it, our body's going to have a hard time registering that. So the cool thing is that I tell women is if you've come from a dieting history, you have a lot of cool skills because you know a lot of things about nutrition. Probably. You probably know some macros, you probably know some calories. We can use that with a mindful eating practice to say, okay, I'm trying to balance my food and then use my body's cues to eat the right amount of it.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I want to ask you, this is kind of like a side note, but it has to do with like the nutrition. And I think it has to do with just how our body gets hungry throughout the day. What are your thoughts on breakfast and people who think, I know personally, I know people who are like, I'm going to skip breakfast and just go as long as I can without eating. And then that way I can kind of have less calories and then I can have more later. I do know people who do this and then end up binging because of probably their body is like, I can't take it anymore. And they just go crazy. What are your thoughts on that and breakfast and things like that?
Yeah. So the first thing that you said, that is correct. If you let yourself essentially that swing again, right? If you're letting yourself be too hungry, you're setting yourself up for a possibility of a binge later because your body is saying, I still want the calories. And if you're going to hold out, then I'm going to find a way to get them throughout that day. And it might be in a binge because when you're starving, do you really crave vegetables? Like when you're really starving, you're like, just give me the treats. So that's the first thing. The second thing about breakfast, that I like to think about this logically. When you have fasted all night, okay, you have told your body, hey, like we're not using energy. We're trying to sleep. We're trying to recover. You're not burning a ton of calories. Well, you wake up and most of us have busy lives. And so we're essentially calling on energy, right? We're saying, hey, I want energy to go do the things that I want to do. And logically, wouldn't we want energy for those things which means food. We need food to give us that energy. And so when we've, woken up from this fasted state and we eat food, we tell our body, we tell our metabolism, hey, you can turn on because I'm going to feed you and I'm going to go move and burn some calories, right? I'm going to do my life and you can burn those calories. So for me, that works the best. I know some people really struggle being hungry at breakfast. A lot of it is a habit. If you haven't eaten for a long time for breakfast, your body has adjusted and just said, hey, I'm not hungry. It's not going to give you that cue in the morning because you've never given it that cue. So I always tell people, maybe try it, get some good proteins, carbohydrates, fats in that first meal, and see if it helps you get a little bit more energy, and your body will respond. It might take a little bit of time, but your body will respond. And I personally cannot go without breakfast. So
Well, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I never used to eat breakfast. And it was like a combination of what you said. And also like I would just drink a bunch of coffee, and that is an appetite suppressant. So, and then I just got used to it, like you said. And now it's like so much better that I've been able to start having breakfast. It's been like a couple of years of having breakfast, and it's just like I'm hungry when I'm, not too late. I get hungry and I'm like, oh, it's so funny. I always thought I could never be a breakfast person, but it just helps me feel so much better throughout the day. And I've seen health videos and fitness videos and like clips of podcasts, and I read the comments when people are talking about don't fast, like have breakfast, especially for women. And people fight it. They're like, no, that's bad advice. You should skip breakfast. And I just think we know so much more now, and we know so much more about how women are versus men. And so, which they say a lot of those studies are based on the men, not the women. Yes. So I do feel like we still need to talk about this, because if you are struggling throughout the day, or you having energy issues, or you're starving later, it's something to think about and look at. I wanted to talk to you about something that you've spoken about, and it's something that I love talking about, but it is creating a wellness routine. And I think this probably goes back to you being such a behavior expert. I've worked with people, and I have friends who get very excited. They have these goals of things they want to implement into their wellness routine, or even start a wellness routine, but they just don't keep it. It just doesn't stick. Walking, for example. I have friends who want to walk and implement it into their life, but they'll do it for a week or two, and then they just stop, and the habit hasn't fully been formed. And I think we are busy, we are stressed in this day and age. Like a lot of my listeners are moms. And so it's like, what's that balance between, oh gosh, it's something else I have to do. It's another thing on my to-do list, versus I get to do this, and this is going to make me feel better, and all of those type of things. So how do you help people with creating something, especially if they haven't really had one before?
It really goes back, it's kind of coming full circle here. It goes back to this concept of identity. What is the identity that you connect with? And that's why my whole platform is a woman of wellness. And I really help women say, whatever path you've been down with diets and all of that, it's probably been a lot of shame and a lot of guilt based. I need to escape my body, like we said. And the truth is I really invite women to step into the identity of the woman of wellness they want to become. And what does that look like? There's so much outside noise. I call it outside noise that's coming in saying, this is the way you're supposed to look. This is what you're supposed to do to be healthy. This is how you're supposed to lose weight. And there is some good components to some of those things, right? There are guidelines that are helpful, but the truth is you are capable of knowing and meeting the needs of your own body. And you get to choose the habits that you want and the lifestyle that you want. If you want to be a CrossFitter or a figure competitor, awesome. If you want to have walking and that you just want to be active and keep up with your family, awesome. Health is defined individually. And we have to go back to that vision. We have to start there and say, what does my life look like as a woman of wellness? What am I doing? How am I living? And once we identify that, usually we can find the movement goals and the nutrition strategy that feels good to you. And that's where things stick. And we can keep talking about, like how do we keep them sticking and how do we start them? But that really is the first step of connecting with that identity and choosing what it looks like first.
Yeah, that is so true. And I'm thinking about like me personally, I've just always been somebody who works out. But I realize like that is an identity to think like that. And it's just something that I've also paired it with like positivity. I love it. It's fun. I feel good afterwards. Sometimes it's not fun, but it's always fun afterwards. It's fun after it's done.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about this a little bit more because if you have a desire to be a woman of wellness and you have kind of figured out, okay, this is what I want it to look like in my head, like my dream of I want to be a person who goes to the gym 3 times a week or whatever it might be. Yeah, how does it stick? Like, especially if they're like, okay, I'm starting to bridge that gap between where I'm at now and the person I want to be.
Yeah. Meet yourself where you are. That's the first step. Sometimes we try to meet ourselves 10 steps down the road. So meet yourself where you are and ask yourself, what is a little bit better? Like what is a little bit better? And I have a couple books behind me. I have Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits, and those are probably my 2 favorite habits books to read. But there's a couple principles in there that are really helpful when you're trying to start a habit. The first one is, like I said, meet yourself where you are and start small. In this Tiny Habits book, he talks about how he wanted to get he hated flossing his teeth and he wanted to have a habit of flossing his teeth. So guess what he did? He started with 1 tooth. He's like, I'm just going to floss 1 tooth every night. And that seems so insignificant. I get it. But he said eventually it just was like, I'm here. I'm just going to keep going. And now he has a habit of flossing his teeth. And then in the Atomic Habits, one of the best ways that we can implement new habits into our lives is stacking it on top of something we're already doing. I have a cute woman in my Healthy Habits membership, and she does like 10 squats every time she goes to the bathroom. So she already has a habit, or like, she uses the restroom, and then she's like, I'm going to do 10 squats after. And for her, that's, that works. And she has other things that she does as well. And so if we can find something that we're already doing, one thing I think would be really easy. And if anyone's like, just give me the idea, move after meals or move after a meal. This is going to really help with digestion and insulin and all of that. But if you're already eating a meal and you're doing it mindfully, hopefully, you're already eating a meal, it might be a really cool add-on if you're trying to move more to say, I'm going to go for a walk after a meal, 10 minutes. And that's a habit stack. Or, you said you're a regular exerciser and maybe you want to be a morning gym person. And you say, okay, I wake up and as soon as I wake up, I get my gym clothes on. They're on the floor, right? That's stacking a habit. And once those gym clothes are on, it's usually pretty easy to be like, oh, well, that's where I'm headed. So if we can find a way to first meet ourselves where we are and then find a habit that we can stack on something we're already doing, it's more likely to stick.
I love that because also I know people who have made these like really huge goals when it comes to movement, especially. And it's like they go from I'm completely inactive to I need 2 hours in the gym 4 days a week. And I'm just like, that is such a big jump. It just doesn't. And then, they don't do it. They missed a couple days and then it's just, then you're nothing. So it is like, this all or nothing thing doesn't work. It's like, yes, just build upon. I love Atomic Habits too, by the way. I haven't read Tiny Habits.
It's good.
Yeah. I have to read that one. But I think that's really another thing about getting more steps in or more movement in after meals. I actually added an after dinner walk recently. And it's great. Like, it's so easy too when you have a dog because the dog's always happy to get a second walk. Yeah, it's just, I have just made it like something I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this after dinner. We started with the whole family. Now it's down to just me. Unfortunately, everybody else is like, I'm good.
Dang it.
But yeah, I do notice a difference. And it's a 10-minute walk, sometimes 20 at the most, but it's not like very time consuming, but it's kind of one of those things like my dishes are done. Now I hit the the street and go for a walk with my dog. So it is something that did take a little bit of time for me to get consistent with, but now it's like, that's just what I do. So another thing when it comes to these habits and implementing them, it's starting small. And then what other tips can you give us for having them stick? And I know for me, I don't know if this is one that you recommend, but sometimes doing it with someone or having accountability, I'm sure that's why your program is so good, but just to have somebody to talk to about it or somebody to keep you motivated. If I want to go to a yoga class, I'm always like, okay, who can I invite to go to a yoga class with me? Because I'll definitely go because I have to go pick that person up.
Yeah. I have a unique definition of sabotage. And I call it the expectation of perfection. When we're starting things, I think we have in our minds that it's got to be perfect from day one, and as soon as it's not, we sabotage. And so what you're kind of saying is we're allowed to explore. That's what makes habit sticks. This habit stick because some a habit that you might have now may change down the road. I exercise regularly, but I recently signed up for a Spartan race, an obstacle course race, which is requiring a lot more of me in the gym and working toward a bigger goal. I mean, this is a really hard race, and it has caused me to change my routine. And then the race will be done, and I'll get back to, a regular routine. It'll look a little bit different than training for it. And so recognizing that your health habits are going to fluctuate. And that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you're allowed to explore, right? You're allowed to see, do you like to do a group fitness class? I actually personally don't like group classes. I would rather just exercise on my own. I've tried a few. I don't love them, but that might be something that really motivates someone. And so I would say try it out. Or like you mentioned, maybe you try to get your family on board and see what they're willing to do, or a friend or something like that. Sometimes it is a little hard because you're depending on someone else. And so at the end of the day, it really comes back to the identity again, right? This is who I want to be. And I may have to do some things to figure it out. Like I'm going to try something and maybe it doesn't work. And that doesn't mean that I sabotage. That doesn't mean that I spiral out of control. Instead, I say, okay, that didn't quite work. How did that not work? Right? Why did I struggle with that? I wanted someone with me. I didn't like going on a walk by myself. I wanted someone with me. Okay, so maybe I need to try to find someone that is in the same, wants to do this with me. Or, you know what? I really struggle waking up early, and it's because I go to bed too late, and if we look at it as you're either winning or you're learning. You're either winning at the behavior or you're learning what's not working to create a winning behavior, then those habits they'll just kind of naturally start to fit into your life. But we're so fixed on it being perfect that we never give it a chance to play out.
That's so true. It shows you how individual all of this is too, because like I love group classes and some people don't love group classes. And it's like the time of day, the type, there's so many different ways. And I mean, if you're doing something because you think you should and you absolutely hate it, obviously that's not going to stick. So it's like finding something that you like and really customizing it to you and doing the experimentation, which I think is so important, because it's like just because one thing doesn't work doesn't mean you give up. It means that you try something else and you keep going until you find something that clicks with you. And I think one thing we talked about more in the beginning was how people are in a rush. It's like they say they get to a point where they're like, okay, I'm ready. I want to be a woman of wellness, or I want to lose this weight, or whatever it might be. And so they want to go from A to Z like super, super fast. And I feel like that's where you get into some trouble. But if you are on this journey and you're like, okay, you're showing us right now with what you're sharing with us, that it's okay that it might take some time, especially if you want it to last. But another, when it comes to, okay, I want to get out of this body, I'm not happy with this body, or they're very negative. How do you help clients in that regard? Because you can see, okay, the reason I am in such a rush is because I hate where I'm at. And being very negative and hating your body, I feel like that's a tough way to get moving, because you're going to just set yourself up for something that's going to not be as effective long term.
Yeah. And I think this is a good place to acknowledge those emotions because those are real and
Mm-hmm.
those can be really heavy, right? When we feel like we're a different identity than we maybe used to be, or we're not where we want to be, or we're comparing ourselves to an ideal, it can be heavy. And feeling uncomfortable in your body is not easy. And so I think that's the first thing is just validate those emotions and recognize that it's okay. And I always remind women you are worthy of time for yourself and you are worthy of it taking time. I had a client that dieted for 30 years. For 30 years, she was afraid of carbs and sugar. And in 6 months, she made peace with food and came like just healed 30 years of dieting. Um, because the truth is, I think we have it wrong. We think that the diets go faster, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it's just creating this same cycle over and over and over again. So, what I recommend to women is think of it like a relationship with your significant other. You are committed to a positive outcome in that relationship. And it's not perfect, right? There's going to be things you learn, but when you're committed to a happy relationship, there are certain things that you have to do. You have to spend time with them. You have to listen to them, right? You need to be kind to them. And when you're committed to that, that relationship blossoms. If you ignore them, if you say mean words to them, if you're unkind, that relationship crumbles. And so it really comes down to, hey, I know that maybe I'm the heaviest I've ever been, or maybe I'm in a place where I don't feel comfortable in my body and I'm so desperate to escape it. Um, Take a minute and acknowledge those feelings and then invite yourself to connect with your body in a way that says, okay, how can I nurture and nourish this body to change rather than shame it to change? Because we've been down that path. And the truth is, they have a lot of evidence, right? We have a lot of evidence that that path probably works really quickly for a short amount of time. And so I get it. But we've got to start building some evidence on the other side that, oh, working on this, right? Going on a walk after dinner and choosing to mindfully eat my food and stopping when I'm 70 to 80% full, those things work. And when I do those things, I'm starting to see changes. And when you get in the identity or the action of nurture and nourishing versus shaming, every choice you make is different. Because I am a woman of wellness, I choose this and we connect. I'm committed to the positive relationship, right? The positive outcome of this relationship with my body. And that means I'm doing these things. So I tell women all the time, body acceptance and body love can coexist with body change. It's just a different approach.
I love that you mentioned that about that it's okay and acknowledge those feelings that we have if they are negative, because and this is just my experience and what I saw online, but when the body positivity movement came in, it was like, oh, you're not allowed to think anything negative about your body or feel any sort of way other than it's great and I'm perfect the way I am. And I think, either one of those extremes where it's you have to be skinny culture, diet culture, to the other extreme of body positivity, it just confuses people. And I think that you end up feeling bad about the way that you really feel. Like, that is okay. And I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's an important piece where that is something that needs to be reminded. We need to be reminded of that. And I also love the story of your client who had 30 years of diet, and then she had 6 months and was able to heal her body and her relationship with food and herself. And some people in the diet world would be like, 6 months, that's so long for me to have to, but look at how short of time that is compared to the years and years and years of, I would say, torture that we put ourselves through when it comes to that extreme. I'm very guilty I have a past of doing all of that. And it's actually not very long at all. Like 6 months goes by, like I feel like the older I get, the faster it's going by. So I love all of this. Is there anything that you want to share that we haven't touched upon that you would like to share with the audience before we have you tell us where we can go and find you?
Parting words, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think just remember that you are capable of knowing and meeting the needs of your own body. And as you were kind of talking, I was just thinking, don't let the expectation be that you have to love everything about your body. I think it's okay, to have some things that are a little bit hard or that, we have to work on. And we go through seasons of life, right? We have babies and we have menopause and we have all these things that our body shifts and changes. And so, trying to do one thing forever, it's not going to work because your body's going to shift. And if you can be adaptable because you have the skill of, I know how to connect with my body and I'm committed to that positive relationship, then you can navigate life's ups and downs and life's seasons.
That's so great. And I know a lot of listeners are going through menopause or perimenopause, and there are definite changes. And to remember, like, that goes back to like, we can experiment and see what works for us because we're all so individual when it comes to this. So this was amazing. Please tell our women who are listening where they can find you. And I will make sure to link all of this in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So since we're on a podcast, I have my own podcast. It's called the Woman of Wellness Podcast, where we go deeper into all these topics: relationship with body, relationship with food, healthy habits. So that's probably a good place to go. I'll make sure you have that mindful eating meditation. It's just a free 6-minute mindful eating meditation to just help you kind of get connected with food and with your body. And then, I'm kind of active on Instagram at A Woman of Wellness. I try. It's not my most favorite platform. I definitely love the podcast, but yeah, reach out to me anytime. I'm at A Woman of Wellness pretty much everywhere.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure to link all of that. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being with us and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.